Hello, hello, hello. This is the Vanilla JavaScript Podcast. I'm Chris Ferdinandi. Thanks so much for joining me. Today, I am talking about when to optimize for performance. Let's dig in. So, last month, Wizen Tanasa, and I apologize if I'm butchering that name, shared a great thread on how he breaks his coding tasks into smaller parts and pushes a bunch of small commits with iterative changes instead of one big commit with a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to drop a link to his Twitter thread on this down in the show notes. I like this approach a lot. Wizen notes, quote, "Smaller commits help retain my flow state, therefore improving my productivity. To have smaller commits, you have to be able to slice your task into nano slices. I have found adopting Angular's commit format to be helpful in the slicing activity." This whole thread is excellent. I highly recommend reading it. One part of Wizen's process jumped out at me, though. He articulated a workflow that aims to prevent premature optimization, which is a valid concern. And so he wrote feature/fix, then refactor, then performance, following Kent Beck's mantra of make it work, make it right, make it fast. Notice that performance is a separate commit type. I like performance improvement to be done as a separate effort, which encourages less premature optimization. Now, I agree with this at a high level, but just like with accessibility work, it's often faster, cheaper, and easier to bake performance in than to apply it retroactively. And as Ethan Gardner points out, fix it later often turns into fix it never. And I will drop a link to Ethan's comments down in the show notes as well. So when do you optimize for performance? Wizen presented an interesting scenario, writing, "If I tell you that a while loop is faster than a for loop, would you fix and use a while loop for all of your future code?" Now, for the sake of argument, let's pretend that the performance difference of looping methods is significant and would make a big difference in site or app performance, because it doesn't. Now I have to track down and update every loop instance in my code, evaluate it, and update it. It would have been faster to do it right the first time. And loops are generally easy to swap out. Real performance changes typically involve bigger changes than that. In many instances, it means approaching a problem a different way or refactoring a pretty big chunk of code. Refactoring working code is always a risky proposition. It takes time and costs money. It means you need to run additional tests to make sure that your changes don't break things. And in many businesses, you often see PMs or companies deciding not to fix obvious bugs, performance issues, and accessibility issues because it works most of the time for most people, or this is an edge case. That loop is slower. Well, it only affects people on slow connections. Our best paying customers have fast machines. We'll address that later, maybe. This sort of thing happens all the time in businesses because their priority is not accessibility and performance. It's making money. And as long as the app is working well enough to continue to do that, they don't necessarily care about these things that really do affect your users. And the thing for me is that performance is built in, not bolt on. Your first pass at something is often sloppy. A refactor is one of the first things I do after I get my code working. But I think pushing performance optimizations to the end of the process ignores the reality of both how businesses work and how web performance works. It's not a bolt-on feature. It's a built-in thing. So, Wizen's thread is about Git flows more than web performance specifically, and it's really good. I don't want to take away from that with this discussion, and I really, really strongly recommend you go read the whole thing. If you want to dig more into kind of efficient Git flows, I think it's an amazing resource. So I'll make sure there's a link to that down in the show notes. At any rate, that's it for today. If you're ready to make this the year that you master JavaScript, I want to help. Head over to gomakethings.com where you can access tons of learning resources, including free projects, books, courses, workshops, and my daily developer newsletter. See you next time. Cheers.